So in this video I'm going to be comparing Nintendo characters from different Nintendo franchises that look similar to one another or are similar to one another. And these aren't just going to be me comparing two characters from one franchise that look similar. These are all characters that come from separate franchises. And what I did to do this was I essentially used background knowledge that I have of all these franchises, but I also scrolled through different fandom wikis, including Mario, Pokémon, Zelda, Kirby, our different Nintendo franchises, and I looked through every single enemy, boss, and character I could find to locate different things that looked similar to one another, because I felt like overanalyzing and looking way too deeply into things. So, to start off, I'm going to start with this thing, Overquill from Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that was released in the recent game Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I believe came out last year. And, you know, it's a pretty neat design, but the thing is, this actually isn't Overquill. This is Overquill, and the first thing I showed was the pufferfish enemy from Super Mario Galaxy 2. And this is one I just noticed on my own. I was playing Mario Galaxy 2, I just got it, even though it's 12 years old, and I've been playing it, and there's just one level called Cosmic Cove Galaxy, where you have to swim through the water at some point. And while you're doing that, this thing passes by you, and the only thing I could think of was, when this happened, was that some kind of glitch in the Matrix was happening, and Overquill from Pokemon in 2021 somehow teleported back to 2010 and appeared in Mario Galaxy 2. Until I realized that obviously is not the case, and this is just some coincidence, or potentially just Nintendo stealing from themselves or something like that. But really, if you look at them, they are very similar. They're both spherical pufferfishes that are angry. Their top half is black, their lower half is a much lighter color. They have rounded mouth shapes that protrude from the rest of their body and are like a different color from the surrounding areas of their body. And inside that little mouth area, they have a mouth that is like an upside down curved shape. They also have many spikes, all of which, or most of which, end in purple. And of that purple, it starts with a dark purple, ends in a lighter purple for both of them. They are just very similar in design, and I found that was very interesting when I saw that, and just how similar they are, and the fact that there's also a decade between the two of them from the games they're in. Anyway, next up is this, Two-Face from Kirby. It is an enemy that is just a mask that leans up against walls, and then when you walk by it, it gets mad at you and it starts to fly at you. This is something I've thought about for a while, but it is quite literally the same thing as Phanto from Mario, which is also just a mask that is on walls and then chases you and gets mad at you. I mean, surely there is some kind of relation there, some kind of reference from one to the other. I'm sure there was. There's no way they just happened to make two angry mask characters that are on walls and then get mad at you and smile and chase you. They are very similar in design. I'm not sure when each one initially appeared. Well, Phanto from Mario, I'm pretty sure it first appeared in Mario Bros. 2 from the late 80s. Kirby, Two-Face from Kirby, I'm not sure, but it might have had a really early appearance, and if then there's definitely some kind of relationship there. Next up is Polterkitty from Luigi's Mansion 3. Now, obviously, the comparison I'm about to make isn't too close, but it's still pretty close. Polterkitty from Luigi's Mansion 3 and Espeon from Pokemon. Now, as I said, they don't look exactly the same, but they are both purple magical cat things with solid color, or sort of solid color glowing eyes, long pointy ears that end in little curved bits, and then little tufts of fur on their cheeks, as well as tails that have split ends, essentially. Well, Espeon is 2 and Polterkitty is 3. It is pretty similar. When I look at the two, I can see a relation. I'm not sure about other people, but I certainly can. And again, this is just me overanalyzing all of this. Anyway, next up is Brolder, an enemy from Mario 3D World, or maybe Mario Galaxy, one of the two. I don't know which one it came out in first, or if it's even in both, but the more important part is that it's a round rock creature with eyes and two big fists on its arms. and it has arms. Those are its only real features, and that immediately makes it sound exactly the same as Geodude. I could describe Geodude from Pokemon the same way, a round rock creature with eyes and big fists on arms. I mean, yes, they don't look exactly the same. Geodude has a mouth, Boulder's arms are different color, but they are just round rocks with faces and arms. Next up is Clambo. I think it's an enemy, or maybe it's just a random thing that just exists, but it came out in Donkey Kong Country for the SNES, and now it just looks like a normal clam, except for the fact that it has two circular eyes and a very human-like tongue, and that description could also pretty much fit Shelter from Pokemon. It is just a clam that has two round eyes and a human-like tongue. And obviously, I'm pretty sure clams do have tongues or something like it that they can, like, stick out of their shells, but it's not a stylized human tongue like this is for both of these characters. They both just happen to have very not clam-like tongues. These are human-like tongues, so that makes them very similar in that sense. The only real difference is that one is purple, the other's a more realistic color. Next up is this thing called Gunyan, which I believe is from Super Mario Land. Now, its actual sprite in the game looks nothing like this, but this is the artwork that is being showed off on the Mario Wiki for this character, and the only thing I could think of when I look at this is that it's just essentially a colored version of the octopus from Game & Watch. They're doing a very similar pose, they're a very similar overall shape, you know, like the circular mouth, the eyes there. They just look pretty similar. Obviously, they don't look exactly the same, but it's pretty similar. And I have no idea where this artwork is from or what it's for, but I'm sure it's official because it's on the Mario Wiki for this character. And I just thought it looked very similar to the Game & Watch octopus. Next up is this thing called a Skull Mouser from, I think it was first introduced in Yoshi's Island, the Mario game. But this is a sprite from the DS version, Yoshi's New Island. You can see that it's just kind of a round purple thing with the top half of a skull covering the top half of its body and then yellow feet. And again, you can use that same exact description to fit another character, being Gabon from Kirby. It is just a purple round thing with a skull on the top half of its body and yellow feet. The only difference is that the Skull Mouser from Mario has arms and a tail, but in this sprite you can barely even notice those two features, so they almost look identical in that aspect. Next up is Neki, specifically Mini Neki from Donkey Kong Country, and Klepto from Mario. Now, obviously, they're both just very basic vultures, so, you know, obviously they look similar, but the fact that they are stylized the way they are, with, like, the very angry or, like, tired out look to them, the upper eyelids being pretty prominent, and the fact that their heads are like a tan color and not like a pink like you would see in a real vulture, I think the way they are just stylized like that, it makes them seem a lot more similar than they would if they were both just like normal vultures, because then they would obviously just be the same thing, but like these are both designed in a way that makes them different from a real vulture and similar to one another. And then next up is this thing, Octumba from Mario. I forget if it was in 3D World or Galaxy or both. Either way, it looks like this. It's a little octopus thing that shoots rocks out at you. And again, you can apply that to something else. You can apply that to Octoroks from Zelda. This is a water Octorok from Breath of the Wild, and you can see that they're both just bluish octopus things with yellow eyes and rounded mouths, and both of them shoot rocks out at you, so very similar there. Not so much in the design this time. Well, yes, in the design a little bit, but even more in the fact that they are quite literally the same thing overall. They're just octopuses that shoot rocks out at you, and that is a very obscure, specific thing for a character to be, so I'm sure there is some reference from one to the other here, too. Next up is Twister from Kirby. It's this little yellow top guy with yellow spheres on him, and, you know, that's kind of random that it just has two yellow spheres on it. But then you see this thing from Mario Galaxy, Top Mini, and you notice that it's also just a yellow top with yellow spheres on it. The only difference is that this one, the spheres are connected to it and not just kind of, like, loose on the sides, and it also has eyes, but, like, if they were both just yellow tops, I wouldn't be making this comparison, but the fact that they both happen to have random yellow spheres on them that just make no sense to be there, other than the fact that I guess they're arms or hands, kind of, that just makes them seem so similar. At that point, the only difference is really just the eyes. And they are the same thing, too. They're just tops. They spin around and hit you as tops. So I'm sure there's some relation there, too. And then next up is Woody from Mario. I believe he's from Mario Party. He appears on some stage or map or whatever you call it in that game. And he's just a tree with a face. And another tree with a face is obviously Wispy Woods from Kirby. And looking at them, they're very similar. The only real difference is Wispy Woods has two branches or arms, I guess, and also his mouth is a different shape. But the thing that really ties them together is the fact that they both have darker evil or more evil forms. Woody from Mario has this one. He turns into this during nighttime on the map he's on in Mario Party. And now he looks all mad and he has a darker color palette. And Wispy Woods has Parallel Woods, which is a form he has in Kirby Star Allies, where he's just even angrier and has a darker color palette. So it's essentially just the same thing between those two, especially the fact that they're both just trees with faces. Next up, from Kirby and Mario again, you have Cappy from Kirby. It's this little mushroom dude with arms. But the thing is, when you take his hat off, which literally happens in the games, when you get near him, his hat, or his mushroom cap comes off. He is essentially just a gyroid from Animal Crossing. Okay, I don't know why I said Kirby and Mario again. I meant to say Kirby and Animal Crossing, but yes, Kirby and Animal Crossing, Cappy from Kirby, and a gyroid from Animal Crossing. They're both just wood-like, tan, oblong shape things with oval eyes, oval mouth, and one arm pointing down, one pointing up. They're very, very similar, and I'm sure, especially the fact that the cap comes off of Cappy and just kind of reveals that he's literally just a gyroid. There is definitely some kind of reference going on here. Then, with Kirby again, you have this thing released in the new game Kirby and the Forgotten Land called Fanta. You'll notice that it's just a ghost with a skull mask, and that's literally the same thing as Duskull. Here's a picture of Duskull. If you put them together, they're essentially the same exact thing, except for the color palette difference. They're both just these round little ghost guys with wispy tails, a wispy little trail on their head, and then these little curved arms that stick out. And they both have skull masks on that have the same amount of teeth. They both have 3 square-shaped teeth pointing out of these skull masks. It is just so similar. I'm sure this Fanta character that came out in the recent Kirby game was definitely some kind of reference to Duskull, because Duskull is, like, over a decade older than Fanta. Next up, with Kirby again, you have Khan, the boss from one of the Dreamland games, and also in Star Allies. He is this red fox dude that looks almost identical to Red from Animal Crossing. They're both red foxes with triangular ears with pink insides to those ears and white tips to those ears, then white stomach areas, and then also a strangely specific eye shape that is essentially the same between both of them. It's like this very long diagonal black slit. Like, you don't really see that in characters often, so the fact that they both are very similar in design and then they also have these eyes, there is definitely some kind of relation there. And I actually think Khan is older than Red, because I think he's originally from an NES game, and Red is originally from an Animal Crossing game, and I'm pretty sure the oldest one is like GameCube or N64, which is obviously older than NES. But yeah, I've also seen some kind of relation between Pan, the guy that Khan is with, to Tom Nook from Animal Crossing, because, you know, they're both like tanukis or raccoon dogs, so yeah, that's just kind of weird how that's all there. Anyway, next up is this thing, the hard hat beetle from Zelda. I have 2 pictures, and looking at both of these, if you kind of combine these designs together, it's just like Buzzy Beetle from Mario. You know, you have that same exact shell shape, in this one picture here, but in this other picture, they literally have the same color palette. They both have a blue shell with a white lining on it, I guess, and then yellow body, red eyes, black mass within the shell. It is very similar, and I'm sure there's some kind of reference going on, as I'm sure about with all of these. Or I'm just saying that because I'm looking too deeply into this. Anyway, then you have this thing called Morph from Zelda. I believe it's from the Wind Waker for the GameCube. It's a little black sphere dude with red spikes and yellow, red, black eyes, I guess. And that made me think of Parallel Krakow from Star Allies, or Kirby Star Allies, which is also just a rounded black shape with red spikes and eyes that have black, red, and yellow in them. You know, that's a pretty specific description, so that made me draw the connection between the two of them. And then also from Zelda and Kirby, you have the sea urchins from Zelda. I'm not sure where this model came from, but it made me think that it's just very similar to Gordo from Kirby, because they're both just black spheres with white spikes and white eyes with black insides to those eyes. The connection is definitely there between those two, and I'm sure one was based on the other. So yeah, that's all I've got. I had a few others, but they were more obscure, and they didn't really look too similar to one another, so I just kind of scrapped them. Anyway, the past few weeks I've been uploading videos where I was renaming every single Pokemon from every single Pokemon region. I was gonna do that this week too, but you know, it's like the holidays week, so I didn't really have time, so I just had to throw something else together. That's kind of why I'm doing this video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and by next week, hopefully I'll just be doing the Pokemon renaming thing again. So yeah, thanks.